For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
Well guys, I finally managed to catch Chris Nolan's Homer's The Odyssey in IMAX at the Airbus IMAX Theater. Now this wasn't 70mm, but it was still full frame. They have the dual laser there and the image was very nice. I had to buy my tickets like weeks ago for this thing because every screening, and I mean literally every single screening, was like completely sold out. I had to sit on the website and visit it every single day waiting for the new screenings to show up so I could buy my tickets, but I finally got it. Bought my tickets July 19th, and I finally got to see it last night. And in the interim, while I was waiting to see this movie, I actually sat down and I listened to the original Greek Odyssey. And I was so excited going into this movie, looking forward to seeing all that awesome stuff, all the buildup and the tension and the surprise and the intrigue and all the epic fantasy stuff. And I heard whisperings that the gods didn't really play as big of a part in this movie as they do in the original poem. And I heard some stuff about how the Polyphemus scene was changed. But I tried for the most part to stay away from spoilers and adaptational changes and things like that, discussion on the movie. And man, I was just disappointed. The very first frame of this movie is a line that says, "in a time of apparent magic." And as soon as I saw that, I knew that this movie was cooked. I had this fear that Chris Nolan is too obsessed with things being realistic and grounded and gritty to actually lean into the fantasy and Greek epic style of the original poem. And it really sucks to see that those fears came true. I want to make clear, I'm not bellyaching about the visual design of things. It would have been nice if at least the main characters were played by Greek actors, but Hollywood not casting appropriately has been like historically a thing, especially when it comes to these sorts of Greek epics. So sure, Agamemnon's armor doesn't really bother me. That stuff didn't really like take me out of the movie. What was taking me out of the movie was its complete lack of themes from the original story or poem. You know what I mean? This movie feels like it's more interested in adapting the events of the Odyssey for the most part, rather than actually adapting the ideas of the Odyssey. And the ideas of the poem are about hospitality and loyalty and not being full of hube and being mindful of the gods. And a lot of that stuff is either completely removed here or watered down to the point it might as well not even be in the movie. Odysseus himself is pretty much completely a different character. Odysseus is more of like a damaged, brooding war veteran rather than like the boastful, I'm tough shit, I'm the big shit, I'm the big dick at Nick kind of guy. Here, his whole hang up, this whole movie, and this is kind of spoilers for a poem that's thousands of years old. This is an adaptational change, but his whole hang up is that he's sad that they tricked the Trojans at Troy with the horse. He was like, thinking about it now, it was kind of fucked up. We shouldn't have done that. And there's a really great monologue. Like, the acting in this movie is pretty good. Matt Damon does a great job. I didn't even see Peter Parker as Telemachus here, which is an issue that I had watching Uncharted, where I was like, wow, I don't even see Tom Holland or like Nathan Drake. I just see Peter Parker. Why is he acting in this manner? Why is Odysseus so sad about tricking the Trojans? It's trying to tie that in with the idea of Zeus's law, which is like the hospitality thing. But that doesn't extend to your enemies, right? It's not the Geneva Convention. That extends to strangers and like people of your kin, not to the people that you're at war with, that you've been at war with for 10 years. What are we doing here? And this is just one of many changes that, while they might seem minor, completely change the intentions and motivations and ideas and themes of the original story. It seems like Chris Nolan fundamentally does not understand the Odyssey, and it's so frustrating because this movie, on a technical and filmmaking level, is a fucking masterpiece, okay? Filming this entire thing with IMAX cameras, making new cameras and casings so that the cameras aren't as loud, which is gonna be great moving forward for other filmmakers to use so we can get more full-frame IMAX movies, is awesome. Visually, the cinematography, even the music, all that stuff is great, but it is paired with a story that just doesn't get it. Telemachus never has his coming of age moment. Like, he kinda does, but not really. The whole thing where the suitors get massacred at the end of the story, which was so well built up through the original poem, is kind of an afterthought here. It's like brought up in passing once, halfway through the movie, and then it just happens at the end. And even the way that was set up, the way that the suitors are locked in and all the weapons are removed from the walls, is completely different in a way that goes against the ideas of the original story. The tension and the suspense, all that shit's gone. Everything that makes that Greek epic a Greek epic is just done. It's out. Why not have the gods here? Because it's not realistic and gritty enough. And I understand they show up as forces of nature, but the decision to remove the Greek gods as actual players in this Greek epic adaptation was like, that was the nail in the coffin. That killed this adaptation. I cannot for the life of me understand why Chris Nolan would adapt the Odyssey when it feels like he didn't really want to adapt the Odyssey. This is not about modernizing this story. This is about completely removing themes and ideas that were integral to that original story. If they at least kept those intact, and like the suspense and the buildup, because constantly throughout the poem, they're talking about how all these suitors are going to get massacred. They're talking about how if they don't leave, Odysseus, when he comes home, he's going to kill them. So the whole time you're like, oh man, I can't wait for that to happen. He's going to show up. Oh, these guys are so screwed. And Odysseus does go through his own pitfalls. Like, he gets trapped on the island with Calypso for many, many years. In fact, when you're introduced to him in the poem, he's crying. He's really upset because he wants to get back to his home, to his wife and his child. Here, she's feeding him lotus leaves. By the way, the island of the lotus eaters is gone, but the lotuses are still here. She's been feeding him the lotus leaves so he forgets about like the war and how damaged he is. Also, the Phaeacians, that is completely gone here. The Cyclops is here. He talks, but not to like the soldier. Like, he gets his eye stabbed with the wooden stake, like how it is in the poem. But then he like cries out to Poseidon, and he doesn't really talk to the soldiers. And also the way that they get out of the cave is like different, right? Because in the poem, they cling to the underside of the sheep, because obviously the Cyclops is going to know the difference between a man and a sheep, right? Because he can still feel. In the movie, they tie straw around themselves, like to their back with rope. And then they kind of crawl out of the cave when the sheep leave the cave. The Cyclops isn't stupid. It's gonna know the difference between straw and sheep. Why make these changes? And Odysseus doesn't have his I am nobody moment, which is a huge part of his character. But like I said, his whole thing with hubris, he's already gone through that character arc. He has this thing when he goes hunting, he plucks his bow so that the thing he's hunting knows that he's there because it's more honorable, which flies in the face of what that character is supposed to be at the start. It is laughable, the changes that were made. Now, not all the changes I disliked. There were some things that I thought, hey, this is kind of an interesting way to reinterpret this. Specifically with Circe, the men that get turned into pigs. In the poem, she just gives them some elixir and then they turn into pigs. Okay, whatever. It's not really that detailed, sure. In this movie, she has like this little hut. And when the men show up, they start eating this gabagool that she makes them, because they're like, oh, we're really hungry, we just want something to eat, some supplies, and then we'll be on our way. But then they get stuck in this cycle of not being able to stop eating. They're just eating, 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 and they start making piggy sounds. And then Circe starts like physically molding the dudes into pigs. And I thought that was it was a cool visual, and it was an interesting idea. This is an interesting reinterpretation of this. And those are the kinds of things that I liked seeing out of this movie, when it took those original ideas and actually did something interesting and new with it. But for the most part, they don't do that. The siren stuff, still there. Odysseus still ties himself to the mast to listen to the song, but then afterwards, he's crying over how it made him sad. That the siren song made him remember all of his failures and it made him sad. Okay. The six-headed monster in the cliff, also here, briefly. It just feels like Chris Nolan's so scared of all the fantastical elements from this story. Like, he tries to get past it as quick as possible. We gotta get past the monsters and the magic. We gotta get past. We gotta get to the realistic grounded stuff, which is the stuff he actually wants to talk about. The other issue I have with this movie is that the editing feels very choppy in certain parts. Like a lot of this movie, the editing feels like a trailer. If you see the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's just, the cuts are too quick. They're not on like any sort of like normal cadence or beat. It's just very weird. I guess you guys can figure out by now that I'm not really recommending you see this movie. This is a very poor adaptation of the Odyssey, and there's even more things about it that I could go into, but I would be here forever describing all the changes and why they just don't work for this story. The IMAX was cool. I mean, like I said, on a filmmaking and technical level, this is a marvel, and I'm glad that he was able to get the IMAX cameras to be quieter, or work with IMAX Corp to make quieter IMAX cameras and even make a casing to make it even quieter still, but it's just paired with a really bad adaptation. Visually, it's striking, and honestly, there's just part of me that wishes I hadn't even engaged with the original story so I could have enjoyed this more. But as it stands, if you've read the original Odyssey or listened to it or you know anything about it, this is just going to be a very disappointing adaptation. There is nothing wrong with having fantastical elements from these stories in these stories, Chris. You can have that. His character writing is also not great. A lot of the character arcs just don't exist here. This is a very light, if you can see this in a true IMAX theater, it might be worth. If you've never read the Odyssey or listened to it, this is probably worth going to see. There are striking visuals here. There are things about it to enjoy. It's just I really miss those ideas and themes from the original story in the way that they were portrayed. And I just don't think Chris Nolan was the right person to direct an Odyssey movie. He was the right person to get the technical stuff down, but as far as the storytelling and character writing thing, it just doesn't work. It's so interesting because it's like, there are directors that are very good technical directors, like James Cameron, who just can't write stories or characters to save their life. And it's so frustrating because they're so good at the presentation of things, but what they're presenting just isn't really it. But I was kind of hoping for a little bit more from Chris Nolan, and bro let me down. I can't really recommend this personally. I mean, you guys know me, I'm a huge fan of fantasy, and he kind of just tried to rip out as much of the fantasy elements from this as was even possible for the Odyssey. And because of that, I'm kind of saying blam this shit. But also at the same time, it's so well made, it feels bad to say that. So what do I do? How do I, rate this movie? How do I rate this movie? Chat, I want you to tell me how I should rate this movie. How should I feel about Chris Nolan's Homer's The Odyssey? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, I gotta edit this video. When I see you guys next, it's probably gonna be Coyote versus Acme, either that or End of Oak Street, which Karif and I are gonna do a review together on, because he is very excited for the End of Oak Street, and you know, I could do with a good dinosaur movie. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this, and have a good day.